It's Killing Eve. Paul, what has your relationship been like with the first series of Killing Eve? Were you as obsessed with it as everyone else?
I watched the first episode, kind of for money, and then I kind of had a long break before I got back to the next one, and then I kind of binged it in one huge hit, like most people did. I think 46 million iPlayer requests, I think, for Killing Eve Series 1, which is incredible, isn't it? I kind of devoured every outrageous twist and turn of it, really. So, yeah, I was fully psyched for it, for Season 2.
And this season picks up pretty much moments after Eve stabbed Villanelle in her Paris apartment, and the two go their separate ways, with Eve trying to distance herself from Villanelle, and Villanelle, probably at her most vulnerable and desperate, trying to stem her bleeding whilst getting to a hospital, whilst also not being found by anybody and having to answer questions about her wound. Now, what we know about this new series is that Phoebe Waller-Bridge has stepped down, called the midwives Emerald Fennell has come in. We said we watched the first two. I struggled with it because I've seen all 8 and the story goes all over the place, but just for this second, these first 2, what were your initial thoughts, Paul? Did you enjoy it? Was it on the same level, do you think? Or could you tell there was a bit of a change at the top?
I thought it was. I couldn't really notice any particular tonal shift. In fact, what happens, as people will probably know by now, is that kind of very quickly from this Paris-based drama, it kind of shifts into a sort of misery in Basildon, doesn't it? Which is quite an interesting left turn. And with Julian Barrett's character kind of keeping Villanelle almost hostage in his mother's nightie. I thought it was kind of an interesting new direction. This may be controversial. It's possibly my favourite Killing Eve episode of all, the one that's set in that house in Basildon.
Ooh, that is perhaps controversial.
You didn't like it, did you, Luke?
I've seen it twice now because I'm a professional and I rewatched it for this podcast. And actually, I did enjoy it more, but I think to me it felt like something that wouldn't have happened in Series 1, and I didn't quite believe that even though she's in a vulnerable state, that Villanelle would have just taken this lying down. I know she's suffering a lot, but I thought it took too long for her to take her revenge. I thought the introduction of Adrian Scarborough as a new handler was well done. I think where the series falls apart for me, and I don't know, I'm sure you're both going to continue, is that we meet in this second episode the new colleagues of Eve, and they don't really feel as well drawn as some of the colleagues like David Haig's character last series and Kirby Howell-Baptiste, who's left to stay in the US and do The Good Place. Those two new characters have a lot of screen time this series, and they don't feel as well drawn. They feel more caricature than character. But Matt, how did you feel going back in? Was it easy to step back into Killing Eve?
Yeah, I mean, I think I enjoyed, as Paul said, the second episode. I felt that the first episode was quite a lot of sort of establishing and setting.
Yeah.
I think Villanelle in the hospital with the young boy who'd been in the car accident, I thought that was more interesting than Eve going back to her life. There were some quite interesting bits, funny bits in there, when she's in the train station bar and someone thinks she's an addict, and the buying the really expensive windows. I quite like that. But I think the being in the hospital with Villanelle, her wearing those sort of superhero pajamas, the snapping of the neck as well, which was a real shock. And I think looking at Twitter last night, a lot of people sort of had that same reaction. I think that was the big moment, if you will, of that first episode, because there was a lot of sort of bridging of the series, setting up what we're investigating now in the second series. And I think then this second episode, I really liked it as well, Paul. I thought, as you said, the misery type thing where he's sort of trapping her in this house, locking all the doors, her sort of struggling to get out. And I think it was believable that she is suffering these injuries and she's limited to what she can do at the moment. She's not at her full capacity. The only thing that didn't sort of sit well, because they filmed it a while ago, is that they were watching Jeremy Kyle, which obviously wouldn't be what they were watching now. But no, I can see what you mean about these characters that Eve's working with now. They don't seem fully drawn as the team in the first season. I have enjoyed the episodes I've seen as far, but I've seen, Luke, that you're not the only person to have that sort of similar feeling from the people who've seen the whole season already.
I shan't do it to you both, but I could say a sentence that would possibly tell you why I feel the way I do about this series as a whole, but I'm not going to do it. But in fairness to Emerald Fennell, to have to pick up where one of your main characters has been stabbed by the other one, it's not exactly an easy place to pick up from. So I think that first episode had a lot to do.
What was quite interesting in that first episode was the way, even though Villanelle was the victim and Eve was the kind of perpetrator of that, Villanelle was kind of more in control than Eve was. Eve was the one that was completely unraveling, wasn't she? Making no rosemary chicken without the chicken. All that. Villanelle quickly kind of regained her composure, and the scenes in the hospital I thought were really good with the kid, where the kid was going, you're funny, and she's so deadpan, isn't she, Jodie Comer? She went, yes, I am funny. And then when you mentioned where she twisted his neck there, I mean, it was a strange one because it was a mercy killing in a way, but a mercy killing you suspect she rather enjoyed.
Yeah, well, she hadn't killed anyone for a while, so she was due a good kill, I think. What I should say is, despite my sort of feelings about this series as a whole, which we might talk about later on when we get to the 8th episode, but I still think that Jodie Comer, Fiona Shaw, and Sandra Oh are just brilliant, whether they're together, whether they're off in their own thing. Those actors just can do anything, and that material allows Jodie Comer especially to play about with accents, she's almost playing several characters in the same episode, and it's just effortless from her. I don't know any other actor that could pull it off.
But what I find what's interesting is the whole thing is very cartoonish, very ridiculous. It's beautifully, wittily, stylishly made hokum, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I thought it was really fascinating that it was nominated for 14 BAFTAs and won 5 of them. It's outrageously silly and divorced from reality kind of show. I mean, there is precedent for that. I know that Doctor Who won the BAFTA in the year of its farting aliens and burping wheelie bins, so it's not that BAFTA are always very serious. But I thought, God, if this gets 14 nominations, what's Chernobyl going to get next year? It's going to be the British Academy of Film and Chernobyl Arts, I think. Do you know what I mean? 14.
So. Yeah, absolutely. Oddly enough, I spoke with a TV writer that I sort of go back and forth in private message with on Twitter, and he really enjoyed it as well. But he said to me, do you think it's a really good drama series, or is it just fun? And I actually didn't have an answer for that.
I think it's definitely compelling. If you're saying drama, does it speak to something about our lives? Does it enrich our lives? Does that kind of? I don't know if I'd put it in that category. It is. It's more 24, isn't it?
I think the characters are very well drawn. The characters of Eve and Villanelle. I think they're well drawn. But especially Eve in the first series, sort of going from the sort of mundanity of her life to being drawn into this sort of world of espionage and things like that. And I think there is an element of reality in there. As you say, the Nigella chicken, the being on the phone to the double glazing salesman for hours. Things like, there's little moments like that. The scene in the laundrette in the second episode as well, where she sort of wakes up and finds all of her drugs are gone. Just little moments like that compared with the sort of the heightenedness of, the more extravagant scenes and the scenes of the killing and things like that. I think they slot in together quite well. And it is,
I agree. That's the joy of it, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think it is more of a sort of an action drama, but I think it does work within its sort of genre. You could almost feel like it was adapted from sort of a graphic novel. I know it's sort of adapted from like novellas, isn't it? But it feels, as you say, very heightened, very glossy, very silly in places. But I think that's part of the joy of it. And I think if we didn't have that sort of variety in our drama, I think if it was all, as you say, like something like The Virtues or When They See Us, which we'll be talking about in a minute, I think, it would be a very gloomy place. I think we need shows like Killing Eve to counterbalance the more sort of darker dramas that we see as well.
Well, that is
Absolutely, yeah.
all there on the iPlayer now, all 8 episodes. We already know as well that Series 3 has been commissioned in the States, and the BBC have already said, yeah, we've bought that. What I find fascinating is that it airs in America. I don't know anyone in America who would have any concept of Basildon, and yet it just sticks these characters there, and it just fascinates me that America's obsessed with it as well.